stitching together his various trains of thought. And so, informed by his wonderful stories and his philosophical ruminations, or often simply repeating things he had just said to me, I tried to do so. In time, we worked out a dialogic process of editing. This was new for me. I was used to getting a more or less complete manuscript from an author, reading it through a couple of times, and then making and revising my comments before returning them for the author's consideration. Oliver, on the other hand, wanted me actually sitting by his side as he tore each finished page out of the typewriter. Here, what do you think? I began referring to this as combat editing. I would arrive home after a day with Oliver, exhausted from the nonstop effort of trying to keep up with his restless intellect for 8 hours. But it was also exhilarating work, and when he phoned me an hour or two later with new thoughts, I was ready to dive back in. What started for me as a freelance job, occupying a day or two a week, soon became a full-time vocation, and then some. In those days, Oliver told me a great deal about his youth and early days as a doctor and a writer. He had published 2 books already, both based on the patients he was seeing as a neurologist. Migraine, 1970, and Awakenings, 1973, already showed his patient-centered approach to his work, his curiosity, and his deep erudition. But though Awakenings had been a literary success, he had received little or no recognition from his medical peers. Quite the opposite. Partly, perhaps because of this, he was struggling to finish A Leg to Stand On, a book he had worked on for almost a decade. He could hardly have imagined at this point that he would one day become a hero to aspiring young doctors around the world, or ignite an entire genre of what he called clinical tales. The letters in this volume are full of contradictions. They are ferocious, tender, observant. They betray a fair degree of self-absorption, the kind many of us might evince in adolescence, but more usually show a concern and generosity, especially for people at the margins of society. Young people, old people, incarcerated people, and of course, patients living with unusual syndromes or maladies. These letters are revelatory even for me, despite my decades with Oliver. They speak of books conceived but never written, of books written but then lost or destroyed, of passionate love affairs, and of his wrestling as a young man with the career choices ahead of him. At one point, in a letter to his parents, July 6, 1961, the man who would one day become the personification of a compassionate physician writes, I am discovering in a far more intense degree than ever before an extreme aversion to patients, sickness, hospitals, and particularly doctors. The truth is, I should never have become a doctor. By 1970, in a letter to his parents of May 6th, he is hitting his stride, and he writes, I think that I am a good and very rarely, at magic moments, a great teacher. Not because I communicate facts, but because I somehow convey a sort of passion for the patient and the subject, and a feeling of the texture of patients, the way their symptoms dovetail into their total being, and how this, in turn, dovetails into their total environment. In short, a sort of wonder and delight at the way everything fits. And it does all fit so beautifully, like a wonderful jigsaw puzzle. One can see that from the beginning he had high aspirations for himself as a writer, perhaps even before he found his true calling as a physician. One can hear his thoughts evolving over a span of decades, returning to the same topics again and again, searching for a new understanding that would fully mature only with the development of modern neuroscience in the 1980s. Sometimes he uses letters to try out new ideas or modes of expression.